Hi, welcome back to my channel. My name is Sarah and I have been away for a while. I have not made a YouTube video in some time. August has been kind of a busy month, definitely been doing some traveling and also dealing with some health issues, honestly, and just not really feeling like making a video or editing a video, even less. But I'm feeling better, and my very sweet boyfriend bought me a microphone recently, so I'm very excited to come back and make some more videos. I'm gonna try to be a little bit more consistent with putting out the videos. I know I've never been like super consistent, but I don't know, at least one every 2 weeks. With everything else that's going on, I would like to aim for, and then maybe a bit more often after that. But that's just a little personal update with some things that have been happening, but I do want to get a little bit more regular with the videos. August also wasn't a huge reading month for me. I did have a couple video ideas that I wanted to go through with and just didn't, and I might do them a bit later to talk about some of the books that I've read and some that I'm kind of catching up on now. But for today, I want to talk about the Scotiabank Giller Prize. This prize is probably Canada's biggest literary prize for fiction, and it is not one that I've really closely followed before. Earlier this year, I walked by a Scotiabank and I saw a picture of all the shortlisted books right outside the bank, and I decided to read some of them. I read the winner, I read some of the shortlisted books. I hope to still read at least one or two of the shortlisted books. I've just been very behind. But this year I want to read more, and I kind of want to follow along with it. I kept it in my mind to be like, hey, this is coming up and I want to follow this. And actually it was a friend of mine who reminded me. She was like, hey, I'm curious if you're going to read any of these books. And I was like, oh my gosh, the Longlist was released and I completely missed it. The Longlist came out a few days ago, and so this video feels a little bit late, but I do want to talk about my reaction to the Longlist because I am interested in following along with the prize more closely. I'm very curious to see who will make the shortlist and the winner as well, and just discover new books along the way. For those who might have watched some of my Women's Prize for Fiction videos, you'll know that I do love book prizes a lot. The Women's Prize is really the one I follow the most, but I do kind of more passively look through the Booker and International Booker prizes, and sometimes I'll read a few books off those as well. And I want to try to read at least 6 books, and as well as the winner if it's not one of the 6 books that I've read from the Giller Prize. Maybe the whole shortlist, depending on how many books are on the shortlist that I've already read. If I end up reading 6 books that do not make it onto the shortlist, I don't know if I'll read the entire shortlist. I'll read the winner probably. But there's a lot of other books like in my life that I want to read right now, so I don't think I can dedicate the time to read 12 books. As is par for the course with most book prizes, I only recognize 2 of the books / authors, and that is Birnam Wood by Eleanor Catton and Girlfriend on Mars by Deborah Willis. I don't think I'd really heard of most of the other authors before or really seen the books. I'm sure they've all been released quite recently this year, so that's probably partially why. But I just feel like, although I do read a lot of literary fiction, I don't know if I could ever predict these sort of lists, because I feel like I'm still kind of out of the loop of who is who in like the literary world, especially the Canadian literary world. I feel like the Women's Prize has helped me be a little bit more familiar. I know they don't have just British authors, but a lot of the authors that do get chosen are from the UK. So that kind of has helped. Same with the Booker Prize and even the International Booker Prize. I'm starting to like kind of remember some names of people who have been nominated the last few years. But I don't know too many literary Canadian authors, I guess, even though I feel like I do read an okay amount of Canadian authors as someone living in Canada. So while I didn't recognize most of these books or authors, I did kind of flip through the descriptions of them a little bit and picked 6 that I would be most interested in reading. Again, I might read some more if I have time or depending on who wins, but here are the 6 that I think I would definitely like to try to read, preferably before the shortlist gets announced, if that's possible. And if not, then hopefully before the winner gets announced at least. The first book is Study for Obedience by Sarah Bernstein, and this one has quite a controversial rating on Goodreads. It doesn't have that many readers, but the rating as of this time I believe is 3.21, and despite it being nominated for the Booker Prize, yeah, it doesn't have that many readers. This story follows a young woman who moves away from her birthplace to live with her brother whose wife has just left him, and she becomes a housekeeper for him. Shortly after moving, a lot of strange things begin to happen around the town, mostly focused on, I believe, the animals and possibly like food sources there. And the villagers, I don't know, I call them villagers, the people there, it gives me villager vibes. The people there become a little bit suspicious of her, as they have of newcomers before. As the suspicion grows and grows, she becomes a little bit more worried about what people might resort to doing if there is a breaking point to be reached. And this sounds very ominous and threatening and very interesting to me. It gives me fall vibes. I don't know why, just it reminds me of like a very isolated setting in the fall. I don't know if it takes place in the fall, but that's just kind of the vibe it gives me. It reminds me a bit of Cursed Bread by Sophie McIntosh, which was longlisted for the Women's Prize this year. And yeah, I'm interested in this one despite the controversial rating. The next book is All the Color in the World by C.S. Richardson. The cover really got me for this one. It looks really beautiful. But this is a book that seems to sweep through much of a lifetime of the main character and through many parts of the world, starting in the 20s and 30s in Toronto, eventually moving into Europe and Italy later on into the 60s. So I really like that about a book. Our protagonist is someone who from a young age becomes very passionate about art. Starts off with a gift he got of coloring pencils that develops into such a lifelong interest and passion into art, and it follows him through life. I believe he goes into, or is at least affected by, World War I, possibly World War II as well, and you kind of see his life through art, I believe, is kind of how the story is meant to be portrayed, how art, I don't know, affects us and guides, maybe comforts us through times of troubles. I don't know too much more than that, but it, again, sort of long, sweeping sort of storyline and location is very interesting to me. I'm not like a huge artsy person myself. I'm a pretty big like museum fan. I do love seeing art in museums, and I'm always like, like this is so cool, but not something I ever really do. The next book is The Islands by Dionne Irving, and this is a short story collection featuring Jamaican women, largely outside of Jamaica, if not fully outside of Jamaica. I believe most of them are immigrants themselves or children of immigrants. I like the idea that a lot of these stories take place in different countries. I think we're going to get a lot of different perspectives and different kinds of stories, but all kind of centering around the theme of trying to escape colonialism and perhaps some of the troubles on what they call the island. I've said before how short story collections can be a hit or miss for me. Sometimes they're really good, sometimes I don't like most of the short stories. But I think a lot of the ones I've read this year have honestly impressed me quite a bit, or I've enjoyed them a decent amount, so I'm very excited to give this one a shot. I've heard some good things about this, like since exploring this prize, I've seen some people talk about it a bit more, but I hadn't heard of this author or this book prior to this. Then we have We Meant Well by Arum Shazia Hassan, and this one sounds wild. This is a debut novel about a woman who gets a phone call in the middle of the night from her colleague who she runs an orphanage with in the fictional village of Likani, and he has been accused of assaulting a young girl there. She flies there and the orphanage is surrounded by protesters. However, there has been no witness, no proof of the crime, and I think she's really not sure what to believe. The story follows the aftermath with the workers and everyone at the orphanage, as well as the rest of the village, and kind of how people feel about what has happened and what can be done, and begins to explore the contradictions of being an aid worker. This book sounds really complicated. The story sounds like a lot, and I'm really curious to see like where the story will go and how things will be handled. The next book is Wait Softly Brother by Catherine Queaton Brewer, and I'm not sure if this is an autobiographical novel. The narrator has the same name, Catherine, as the author, and whenever authors do this, I don't know how autobiographical it is. I don't know if it's, I don't know what it is. It always makes me think that it must be at least a little bit. It's about a woman who leaves her marriage to help sort through mementos for her aging parents while a storm rages in the town that they live in. And as she's going through all this, she becomes very fixated with a distant relative who was a soldier or a substitute soldier during the American Civil War. His story really transfixes her and seems to kind of wind with her own. And so we find out these connections and the sort of interest that she has in this story, all the while she's being cut off from the world because this storm is raging on. So I'm really think this will be very atmospheric. I hope this book delivers. I can see it being a little bit strange too. I love the cover, but yeah, I wonder where it'll go. I don't know, I'm just very curious about this one. I did choose this one a little bit because of the cover. I just really like the yellow. But the story itself sounds pretty good, so I hope to get to this one at some point. Last book is Birnam Wood by Eleanor Catton, and this is the one I've seen the most at the library and bookstores. I've definitely seen the cover before. When I saw it on the list, I was like, oh, I immediately recognize this one. But I've not ever really looked into what it's been about. I've never read it. Would not have expected it, but it is about a gardening guerrilla group created by a woman, and they just plant, they're named Birnam Wood, and they just plant crops where no one will really notice them. However, they're having a bit of trouble sustaining themselves and breaking even as a group. The main character, Mira, does end up finding kind of an abandoned location for them to potentially set up and be a little bit more secure for the long term. However, there's an eccentric billionaire who wants to build a compound on that same piece of land. But after he hears Mira's story about her work and the stuff she does, he becomes a little bit intrigued in that and offers that perhaps they share the space and they work together. But as time goes on, Mira begins to wonder if she can trust him. I mean, I think from the start she begins to wonder if she can trust him. But they both, I think, end up wondering if they can trust each other towards the end as things go, as they do have different ideologies and purposes and what they want to use this land for. Sounds like a very cool thriller, a little bit mysterious, so I'm very intrigued by this one. And this one there's so many copies at the library, but there's also so many holds, so I do hope I can get to this one soon. I think it might be the one that interests me the most on this list. However, they all sound very good, the ones that I've read. I will also mention all the other books. The other ones don't sound bad to me. I don't think that there's any book that I'm like necessarily against reading, but these are the ones that sounded the most interesting. There were some of them that I wasn't super even clear, like from the description, what they were necessarily about. But if they do make the shortlist, and especially if they win, I think I will check them out. The other books are Away from the Dead by David Bergen, The Double Life of Benson Yu by Kevin Chong, The Clarion by Nina Dunich, I'm just scrolling through, The Rooftop Garden by Minaka Raman Wilms, and We Have Never Lived on Earth by Kasha Van Schaik, and Girlfriend on Mars that I mentioned before by Deborah Willis. So I'd be interested in reading more of them, maybe just over a longer period of time, like I kind of did with last year's shortlist as well. There were a few I read pretty early on, and then after that it was much more staggered because other things just get in the way. The shortlist will be announced on October 11th, so if I can read at least 2 books by then, I'll be happy. It feels like it's so soon. They always announce the shortlist so soon. I'm not actually sure when the winner is announced. It's probably gonna be like December 23rd or something like that. I don't actually know, but it's gonna be so far away, but I want to get through as many books as I can before the shortlist. I don't know, I get so excited to see like what books are kind of finalized. I don't know that it's more exciting than when the winner gets chosen, but I think it's, at least with the Women's Prize for Fiction, it's like I try to read so many of them before the shortlist gets announced, so it's always kind of like, whoa, I read this book, I'm so glad I was chosen. And so with this, it's kind of the same, like, I don't know, I want to try to read as many as I can. So that's it for this video. If you are interested in following this prize, if there's any books you want to read on the long list, I would love to hear about it. If there's anything from the past, like in this prize that you've read that you think I should check out, I would love to hear about it as well. Please leave comments below, please like and subscribe, and share this video or channel with any other bookish friends you know. It would really mean a lot to me to have that support. And yeah, I hope everyone has a wonderful rest of the week, rest of the day, whenever you're watching this, and I will chat with you soon.